Welcome to the channel. My name's Tim, and I do the Edgar Allan channel, Ravens video. Normally, today we're going to go through a 53-man roster projection. It's myself and Josh Hoffman. Josh has done a number of local shows. Really enjoyed him with Ken McCusick, and you may recognize him as being just present online in terms of Ravens related stuff. So Josh, I'm glad to have you here.
It's great to be here. I can't believe you just said your name. That's you're the international man of mystery usually. That's part of your persona, I thought. Or does that
Uh-oh.
just happen by accident?
Well, no, I have no problem putting out the old actual name. So,
I see.
but you
I see.
can
Well,
refer
that's
to me
cool.
as Edgar. Tim is good. It's my birth name. So, uh, whatever
Yes,
you're
it is.
whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah, Josh and I, we spoke on the telephone the other day um, for about an hour, kind of running through some of the things we might discuss. Certainly, the 53 man is going to be a big topic here, but we were all over the place with football, and we had a good conversation, and got into a little bit about felling trees and plumbing and stuff like that. So we got that out of the way. You don't have to worry about that. Josh, let's jump into it. Let's go defense. Um, I guess we can go back and forth if you want to start. Um, let's go defensive line. Who are you thinking about on defensive line for the Ravens?
Sure. So we know the Monstars are on the team, right? These are easy to pick off roster spots. We got Wolf, Williams, and Campbell in no particular order. So that's not particularly much to talk about there, I don't think. Are you looking forward to how these three are going to be doing this year?
I think that the only issue there would be health. Just keeping our fingers crossed that they're healthy. But and I'm looking for hopefully a big year from Calais this year. Derek's always going to play. He's always going to spill his guts out there. There's no doubt in my mind about him. And just want to, like I said, keep my fingers crossed. And I thought Williams played well last year. So limited snaps, kind of in rotation, but I thought he had a nice year at nose tackle when he was out there.
Definitely. And I think Wolf, I would say he's an unsung hero, but I feel like everybody is saying that. He had that play in the Titans playoff game, the one where Henry almost broke a big run finally towards the end of the game, and Wolf just kind of leapt on him like a lion and took him down after about 7 yards, saved a big run.
Yep.
And of course, remember during the pandemic roster, he was pretty much the only real starter left on the line, and that we played the Titans as well, and things were doing okay.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see Wolf. Definitely hoping for Calais and Brandon to have the big years. That's big stuff when we're holding down the run game, and that's those are the guys doing it. We don't have a whole lot of depth there, which is another big topic.
Yeah. I think that play you mentioned in the playoff game, boy, oh boy, it really is a game of inches, isn't it? I mean, that one play, he looked like he had some room to run. Man, that would have just been heartbreaking. And you're right, he was the kind of last line of the D line in terms of defense there, and he did make that sort of ankle tackle. That was the
He came from nowhere. He covered a lot of ground to get to Henry when he did right there. That was a tremendous play.
that his biggest run of the day. I think he picked up 7 or 8
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
Yep, that was the biggest of the day, and it was almost huge. It was almost a killer play, like you said. So
Yeah.
that was big. That
Yep.
was big. I like what Wolf brings. I like Wolf a lot. I like all three of them a lot.
Who do
I,
you
I
have?
do.
Who do you have in terms of rotational stuff or depth on the D line?
Yeah. So definitely Marta BK. Or I think watching him on your channel and what you've covered, his moves, the way he gets penetration on the inside, I just love what I see from him. Mainly again because of what I see on your channel from the breakdowns. I'm hoping he's not the biggest guy. I guess people would say he has limitations. We shouldn't have too high of expectations, but they've said that about a lot of guys who turned out to be really great.
I agree. Yeah, big expectations for him. I don't think they're unreasonable. Um, yeah. he's a different sort of defender in terms of the Ravens prototype, I think, and really electric, explosive down the line, off the line, and yeah, very a lot to look forward to in terms of Matabike. So we've got four so far on the D line for sure that we both agree on: Matabike, Calais, Derek, and Brandon.
Definitely, and that's pretty much where the excitement stops, I think. Even though we have a few more um, we can definitely pick out. You said it's interesting. You said three tech. Is it correct that that's usually where he is? I feel like I've seen him a little further inside now and again, or was that my imagination?
I think he's primarily a three tech. I have seen him as a nose tackle, and then they'll square him up on the guard sometimes. But I think they really like him at three tech. I'm not sure. In college, he did play some five tech, sort of like a rusher, and it was not nearly as effective. So I think that's really where they see him primarily is over the guard or outside the guard.
That's where he looks the best. He's coming off the blocks, and he's hard. He's hard to keep a block on him, and he sort of sheds pretty well, I think. And he's one of the few young guys we have on the team, besides the new incoming rookies, that I feel really optimistic about. No asterisk, no nothing.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I'll go along
absolutely.
with you. I'll go along with you on that. I've got I'll give you the number that I'm thinking on the D line, and I'll give you it's six. So I have two beyond those four.
Okay, I think they're probably I guess Ellis and Washington, right?
Yeah, I'm not over the moon really about either, but you mentioned not much depth in terms of nose, a pure nose run stuffing type, and I'm hopeful about Washington. I did a video last night and was a little bit surprised by how much I liked him. I wasn't able to watch a ton of his late video. I thought most of his problems or most of the areas were just kind of inexperience. He'll get a little bit off balance. He doesn't have much in the way of hands, but he is off the ball pretty well. He is plays with very good pad level, and he's got some shock to his hands. So there's some definite upside to my mind in Broderick. He's going to have to. There can't be with this thin as this defensive line kind of is. There cannot be any drop off in terms of especially defending the run when he comes in or when he's out there. So that's something to watch. To me, he is um, a candidate perhaps for injured reserve. There's some thought in my mind that they could bring in someone. Oh golly, I can't think of any good names that can play inside, and they're pretty convinced can provide a pass rush. A lot just with most of these guys, as with most of these guys, a lot is riding on the preseason.
Definitely. And I'll tell you also, I don't know if this will ultimately make sense when we get there, but it was the 50th man that I picked, but I actually had Aaron Crawford as possibly making the roster. You probably remember, he played essentially during only when the pandemic apocalypse happened to the roster. And then he was back to the practice squad. For some reason, when I got down to the very bottom, he was a guy I put in there. Again, I don't know if that's going to make sense when we actually talk about it. But he's got maybe some versatility, and somehow I had him making it. We'll see if that still holds up at some point.
Do you see him as filling in for one of those six or as a seventh D line player?
I see him as possibly practice squad, possibly
Okay.
injured reserve, but actually maybe making the team as one of the 53, probably inactive. But you got to expect to see some injuries. I think they like to go into the games usually with what, five active, but they don't always do that. Sometimes we have like three or four active.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see about that.
He could be a guy that's very very valuable. You're right to on the practice squad. be interesting to watch. You know, you and I were talking about how much we enjoy the preseason for that reason. You know, I'd look forward to those preseason games just to see guys like Aaron Crawford.
Definitely. And hopefully we'll see a little less of the veterans. Like we don't need to see Ellis in the preseason, I would hope.
Yeah.
Although I wonder if he's one of those guys that's not in the best shape in the off season, so he's got to play in the preseason a little bit more.
Hmm.
So we will see. That's going to be good to see guys like Crawford and Marta BK. I'm sure is going to be dominant looking in the preseason. I think Washington probably too. I know the Ravens like Washington. You can, but just by the amount of playing time he got last year.
Yeah. Yep. I like how
So
back to Washington. I like how he moves around a lot. He did that in college. That whole I don't know. The whole notion about positionless players, he fits into that to me on defense. Um,
yeah.
do you want to go to what you have for inside linebacker?
Sure. So inside linebacker was we have Fort. They re-signed, which didn't look like they were going to. I was really happy about that personally because I think he fills a big need. I'm a little bit worried about Harrison and Queen this year for coverage and other things, but I like Harrison and Queen a lot, but I still wonder about if they're quite ready to fill the role entirely. So I'm very glad to see Fort back. So I have Fort, I have Harris, and I have Queen. And I have Chris Board because last year, of course, they had Board in that sort of hybrid safety linebacker role on third downs because they didn't really seem to have another linebacker that could do that. You know, all the packages Wink has. So I think that Board is a guy that they like a lot for what he does. So I have him definitely in there. Olaka's bubble. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 that I had for the middle linebacker roles.
Hmm. Yeah,
Christian Welch is an interesting one. Do you have any any predictions on that one?
on Welsh, I have not watched him enough, but you know, I'm going to go with what seems likely is that he's practice squad or yeah, I don't have him making the 53. And so far, you and I are just lockstep in terms of the D line and these four that we both have making it: Malik, Patrick, LJ, and Chris Board. Um, yeah, I'm okay with that. I also think Olaka is a bubble guy, but that's probably an injury related situation. I always liked him as a player. He does put me to mind a little bit of Malik, but if there is an injury, he's a guy I would look to come in as a fourth inside backer. But I don't think we keep more than four.
So Queen is an interesting topic, and you're a good guy to ask about this. I always get in trouble when I talk to people on social media about Queen because I'm not always the most complimentary. But so I have to preface it by saying I like Queen, which I do. I really do like Queen. I like some of the plays. I love that play. I forget which game it was where he met the running back, sorry, over the top and
Oh
kind of
yeah,
hit him. I hadn't really, when he sort of both of them met in a nosedive over the top of the pile,
yeah.
and that was tremendous looking. I hadn't seen something like that in a while. But the guy missed a lot of tackles last year. Let me pull up the stat and make sure because I've been repeating this a lot, and I want to make sure that I'm right. But he, I think, finished the year leading all linebackers in missed tackles, if I'm not mistaken. And let me see, it was something like 14% or the missed tackles. I hope I'm getting these numbers right before I say them. But yeah, okay, 12% of tackles were missed. And no, that's not last year. Probably should have wrote this down before I started.
Well, yeah, he does.
Yeah, so
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
okay, he had 22 missed tackles last year. And it was for most of the year he was leading all linebackers. Of course, with missed tackles, the closer you play to the line of scrimmage, the less tackles you miss on average, for obvious reasons. You know, you're closer to the ball carrier, less space going on, so the DBs and etc. miss more tackles. So you might expect to see a defensive lineman to be missing, less than 10% of their tackles, and for a DB, it's not unusual to be missing something in the high teens, of course. So that worried me about Queen. Of course, in coverage, he's supposed to be the sort of next gen linebacker, right? Remember Ray Lewis at one time was considered kind of small and like a next generation style linebacker.
Hmm.
Queen, I feel like, is kind of the same theory. He's smaller, faster, new pass happy NFL. So I'm really optimistic, but I feel like I'm looking to see some stuff from Queen, some big improvements. What about you?
Um, yeah, when you watch Patrick, you do see a guy who makes plays, big hits on the quarterback, very good, obviously a very good blitzer, very good. He is new to the position, or relatively new to the position, obviously coming in, playing a very, very difficult position to get acclimated without any training camp. Uh, the same boat everybody was in, but that's a difficult position to start. In terms of what you want to see him do, or you'd like to see him improve upon, it's no secret. Everybody talks about pass coverage. Um, uh, I heard, who the heck was saying this? Two guys. Have you seen the podcast? Two guys watching football. It's Cole Jackson's got a YouTube, and
Yes, I've seen it.
and they were talking about it, and I thought his guest had an interesting point. He said Patrick has to know that he is fast enough. In other words, sometimes he's just hair on fire to a play when he doesn't need to be. Um, I thought that was an interesting way to put it. He's fast enough to make the
Yes,
play, and
very, very
um,
interesting.
and I think that's something you want to watch for. Just him becoming more confident, comfortable. He does tackle high. He does not throw his body around the way you would, in a classical sense, expect a linebacker to do. I'd like to see him become more physical. Certainly, I'd like to see him uh, get, improve at taking on you sort of hit and shed stuff. Uh, so yeah, there's some reason for optimism, and also for some let's wait and see kind of thing.
You mentioned the preseason. That might be number one guy I'm looking forward to seeing just how he looks in the preseason. Will he have put on some that sophomore muscle weight that we see from the NFL players a lot? I think he probably, like you were saying, he's fast. He could probably afford to put on a little bit of bulk, be a little more physical,
Yeah,
and knowing the game a little bit better and playing with more confidence. It seems like he has all the tools. So let's hope for big things from
yeah.
Queen.
Yep, he's gonna be fun to watch for sure. Um, there were a number of plays where he really impacted, particularly on blitzes. Um, there was one, I can't remember who was playing, but it was a typical thing. He comes off some sort of late blitz, and he hits the quarterback, big old hit, and the ball goes right right into Pernell McPhee's hands, and he drops
Yeah,
it. But he
I
made
remember the one you mean. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of plays like that. So yeah, he's a playmaker. The play you mentioned down in Washington, he was very effective in college at the goal line for whatever reason. I remember seeing that, just showing up at the goal line. So that was cool to see that translate into the pros. Um, what about outside? So far we're up to 10. We got 10 on the squad. What about outside
Okay.
linebackers? What are you thinking there?
Okay, I'm high on Bowser. I really really like Bowser, and not just because of the interceptions. Although I do like that a whole lot. I like that he's sort of got a nose for the ball, and he anticipates things, and he knows what's going on. But I can't point to the specific examples, but I remember seeing him make a number of sort of shoestring tackles, plays where and it's hard with football because you don't know what might have been, or maybe somebody should have been somewhere else. Maybe it shouldn't have had to be a shoestring. All that kind of what if stuff that people don't usually address. But I feel like when given the opportunity, Bowser makes that play that's a little bit above and beyond. So I don't know if he's going to be like a 10 sack guy. I wouldn't bet on that, but there's something I like about Bowser. He's got that something intangible that I see in the plays he makes, where it just looks like he's going to make big plays. So I've definitely got him, and I'm happy about it. This is not a position where I'm thrilled with the roster, but I'm a little happier about him, I think, than most people. What say you on the Bowser topic?
He's the sort of guy that I like. I mean, guys like Tyus and Nick Boyle and Chuck Clark and Pat Ricard, just guys that have their head straight ahead and their nose to the grindstone. All those cliches, but they just work. They're just football players and they work. And it's hard not to see that in Tyus. I would like to see him be a better rushing the passer, um, better at rushing the passer. Honestly, I have not seen. He looks essentially the same to me coming after the quarterback as he did as a rookie, and that puzzles me. I mean,
That's true.
he's a better football player, even in terms of covering the pass, than he was coming out of college, and he was good coming out of college. Everywhere he's improved, but I'd like to see that take just a small jump, at least a small jump this year. And I'm not sure where that gets lost. He's got speed, he's got some pop to his hands, and it just don't see much um, tech, technically different between year one and year, I guess, four. So that would he's gonna have to bring something off the edge, I think, this year.
And we've seen guys do that in their year 5 with the Ravens, and maybe he'll be one of them.
Hope
So
so.
let's hope so. And then we'll have to debate next year with how sad it's going to be that he's going to be either gone or getting a large contract. It's contract year,
Oh
so
no,
maybe he'll get a.
Tyus signed a deal.
Oh, you're right. He did
Yep,
sign that deal.
he's coming
Okay,
back.
so forget that. Maybe there's not as much incentive. No, no, I'm optimistic on ties. I think we are going to see something. I don't know if it's going to be explosive, but I think we're going to see some marginal improvement there for the reasons you mentioned. He's got the work ethic. He's smart.
Yep.
I think he's going to improve a little bit, even though we might have expected to see some of that before now. I'm just optimistic with him. Anyway, who do you have next? I know who we got our first round pick. Of course, it's got
Right.
Beal in there. What do
Yeah.
you think of him?
It's another wait and see to me. Josh, I can talk myself into anybody. Anybody the Ravens draft, I can, I'll admit that. Um, did not like him uh, before pre-draft, and there were guys this year where I watched them for a game and a half. I'm like, nope. And I don't know what if that was that isn't fair, but it was just a time thing. He was one of those guys. When I went back and really, really watched him, like I said, it's hard to measure whether I'm talking myself into things. I don't think so, entirely anyway. Uh, he's very athletic backside to chase stuff down in a way that the Ravens have not had. Um, it puts me in the mind athletically, in terms of potential, of someone like TJ Watt in that regard. The ability to kind of chase, kind of like surf and then chase, and chase something down backside. Does not look good, or did not look comfortable, because I don't believe he was asked to do this much, but did not look comfortable dropping into coverage in the two, and that's not a lot. Times that I saw him on tape being asked to do that. Um, as a pass rusher, I'm a little bit more hopeful than probably a lot of people when we look at his stats from last year or whatever. I think he's a guy
It's
that can run through people. I've seen him do that, and he's a guy that can beat people inside. And he's constantly already working his hands. Now he's very sloppy with them, not exact at all, but he is aware of that, and those things get me excited about him.
Yeah, it's a fascinating pick. I'm just absolutely fascinated that they picked him where they did. They could have picked something I'm sure we'll talk about later, a center. They could have picked, the guy they had Creed Humphrey available. So, they saw the same stuff we've seen on tape, I guess, except plus an interview and everything else they got. And this is a big pick I think, for Eric DeCosta, because this is a big draft for Eric DeCosta because the Ravens before this draft, they had drafted more wide receivers than any team in the top three in the first 3 rounds in the last 2 years since Eric's been the GM.
Hmm.
That has not been a smashing success. And then we have Jalen Ferguson, which was the second round pick. Was he second or third round? He was a second pick at one point.
He was a third round pick.
The third round pick.
Ferguson.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I don't remember who
So
went first, Josh. Who was first in that round? Was it he or Boykin?
I think it was him. Yeah, it was him, and then Boykin was our third pick. So it went Hollywood, Jalen, and then Boykin.
Okay.
So I'm looking this year again with the edge rusher type and the wide receiver. Owe made it so that has been the focus of Eric's drafts in the top rounds. So we'll be looking to see something from there in this year and the next year. Otherwise, it's going to be a question in my mind, at least, about the drafting in the high rounds, because we really need to see something from these guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of, it's a nice segue, I suppose, into outside linebackers. Ferguson, I do have making the team.
Yep.
But I don't know if I'm optimistic about him or not. You've obviously studied him a lot more than I have. What are your thoughts on Ferguson?
He's inconsistent. That's the word that comes to mind. I was surprised though he is a little different in year two as a pass rusher. Year one was all bull rush. Year two, there was more trying to get hands off, hands away. He does not have athleticism in terms of straight ahead, lateral, stop and start, none of that. So I agree that he makes the team. I think he can get you 4 to 5 sacks. I think he will, given reps, which isn't a ton, of course, but I think just a subtle improvement will get us to that point. And he is a physical guy. If he can get a little bit more disciplined, I think you'll see a solid player.
I hope you're right. I really do. That's the guy that will make everything look a lot better if he just somehow stepped up and became a bigger contributor. It would answer a whole lot of questions. You notice we've been covering D line and on inside and outside linebackers. We're except the middle linebackers, but other than the middle linebackers, we are not seeing a whole lot of next generation talent to be really excited about, except Marta Pique.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about besides the middle linebackers, of course.
Yeah.
And that's scaring me a little bit. So I really, really hope to see some stuff from these guys, Ferguson and Owe, because we're going to be seeing a salary cap problem if we don't have these young contributors on their rookie contracts. Things are going to get ugly pretty fast. And I think some Ravens fans are starting to notice that. So Ferguson's a guy who can answer some serious needs and questions for us as is Owe and everybody else we're talking about. But Ferguson really sticks out because he was, pretty high draft capital, and really so far hasn't paid off for that. I don't think, not like we would have hoped anyway.
Yeah, definitely not. You're right. That is not. I mean, I have 5 outside linebackers. There is an outside chance that we take or pick somebody up off of another roster or some kind of signing. Everyone is talking about Justin Houston, but those 5 names are the 5 that I have: Owe, Bowser, Purnell, Dalen Hayes, the other rookie, and then Ferguson. That's it's not inspiring, and I never believed, although he could have believed it when Coach Martindale was talking. I forget. I'll paraphrase. He said that sacks don't matter that much, or I forget how I worded it. I never believed that he believed that, and I hope this does not become a real sore spot. The lack of pass rush. We do need someone like Bowser to take another step in Ferguson, and then just Owe if he can bring pressure. Yeah, there's a lot of ifs there, aren't there?
That comment by Martindale, that's one of those things where I wonder, was he making the corporate PR statement, or does he actually believe that? Because sacks do matter. I was talking to somebody about this. I've heard a couple people about this, and we were trying to decide, what does a sack count for? With analytics world, if we were going to assign points to the value of a play, and how much does a sack really? I know this has been done by other people; they've studied it, and it turned out exactly as I was sort of suspecting. Sacks count for almost about half as much as a turnover because because of how often they tend to end a drive, which of course a turnover does by definition. They tend to cause turnovers and they switch field position around. And sacks count for a whole lot. Martindale had that other comment he made more recently, where he said, give me my cornerbacks, and I can find a way to manufacture pressure. I'm not worried about it. That's sounds like the words of a man who's had really talented cornerbacks and not really talented edge rushers. And I think he's been made into that. But of course, wouldn't he prefer a front four that got crazy pressure consistently, and then you had all these other guys to do coverage.
Yeah.
But that's not what he's had. So I wonder if he really believes that or
Yeah.
not.
There's a part of him that believes it, but I think he believes in himself. Do you know what I mean? Which he should. Be like, well, I'll get pressure anyway. I don't care what you put out there. I'll get pressure with this secondary, uh, because he's clever. He's very clever, and he trusts the athletes and he trusts himself. So I'm sure there's a part of him. But yeah, you're right. When push came to shove, if you asked him if he wanted whoever you name the edge guy, uh, he'd take him. He'd take him.
Yeah. Does he want like? Would you rather have the front four that the Colts had in 2007? With the Freeney Mathis thing, or the Ravens in the year 2000? I think you take that.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. Are those the five you
He's
have in terms of outside
Yes,
backers?
yes. I wasn't Hayes actually. Somehow I got to 53 and I didn't have Hayes. I have this funny feeling with Hayes that somehow he doesn't make it, but that's not because of anything personal. I just don't know that much about him. I thought guys like Mac were going to make it. They seem to have a thing where these sort of low or undrafted guys that seem like they're going to make the team don't make it the last couple of years. So Hayes, I wasn't sure about. I actually only had four that I numbered,
Okay.
but that doesn't seem like enough. So I think you bring up a good point there. It's five seems like a better number just for obvious math reasons
Yeah,
and just depth.
I
So it
think
seems like
so.
they have to have Hayes.
They could even go six if they bring in somebody, and that would, of course, take something off another position. But yeah,
It's funny where we are with that. I was saying a few months ago, they must bring in Houston. They must. This is supposed to be a serious Super Bowl contention year for the Ravens, and we can't have another year where we're not sure about the pass rush. Of course, they've got to bring in Houston. It doesn't look like they're going to bring in Houston, and yeah, I wish they would. I wish they would bring in somebody, do something, because it's just not the time for there to be obvious holes on the roster like this, which is something maybe we'll get into maybe when we talk about wide receiver. I feel like they've been a little bit negligent going into these last couple of seasons with really big holes on the roster that everybody could see coming, and this is not supposed to be happening. Of course, no top 10 paid quarterbacks won the Super Bowl and like forever until really recently anyway.
hmm
I don't over Yeah, Brady was a top 10 paid this past year, I think. But before that, of course, part of the reason was because Brady famously would take less money. But other than that, there's reason to think that your quarterback's rookie deal is your Super Bowl window for obvious reasons. So I don't like this idea of another year where we go into the season and we could have done more. I don't
yeah,
want to see that. So I hope they bring in Houston or somebody.
yeah. I think they will. I'm not sure about Houston. They'll bring somebody. That's my sense. Let me.
Well, anyway, we skipped over McPhee. Probably not a lot to say with him. I think we both really like McPhee. He seems to get better and better, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely slowing down. He has that great kind of jab step and an inside move, and he's another like favorite guy. I mean, he's a favorite, serious kind of old school Raven type, and works, beats people up. Remember Ben Mason said, "I like every time I step on the field, I'm the toughest guy out there," something to that effect. I'm like, well, you're going to be the second toughest. if you with Purnell out there, and he's a bad dude. So
I remember when the Ravens brought Purnell back, the thing that made me feel confident was something you showed in one of your videos, and it was a play I couldn't tell you for any amount of money what game it was. Maybe you'll remember. But he had essentially taken on two blocks in a run play. He had one guy come and block him, and he sort of shed the block, and then another guy came and he held the edge against one blocker and then two blockers. So he's obviously screwed up the run play for the offense really badly. And he's just really, really stout in the run, really stout. And he showed up huge in that Titans playoff game. Oh boy!
Oh, he was just all over. Yeah, I remember that when we brought in Purnell, there was a fair amount of talk. Well, he's washed up. People would watch the stats, but I remember going back and watching his last three games, and I said, no, he still got it. And yeah.
We love Purnell, but I think we have to. I would say maybe it's just because I'm a cynic like that, but our standards have definitely dropped because we don't have a Suggs there. We don't have. We're not talking about anybody who's like a premier star, huge play kind of guy on the edge. We're just not even in that universe anymore. It's been that way.
Yep.
And it looks like it's going to stay that way. So let's just note it for the record. That's all. We like these guys, but we seem to have dropped our standards of what we're expecting there. That's all.
Let's get into the cornerback safety group. This is going to be interesting, I think. I'll start because I've got a bunch of guys, and I'll just rattle them off. And
all right.
Ultimately, including safeties, I've got us keeping 11 in the defensive backfield. Marcus, Marlon, Jimmy, Tavon. Those are the givens. Anthony Averett would be my number 5. Brandon Stevens, who I consider a cornerback, but they'll probably, I think he's a corner. They've been talking about him as safety, but I'm listing him at cornerback. And then Sean Wade. So I've got us keeping 7 corners and 4 safeties. Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott, Anthony Levine, and our Darius Washington, the undrafted free agent. So I've got us keeping a big number. And what do you have?
I had 10 and all of the ones you said, but I didn't have Stevens, although I recognized he's versatile and probably a guy they would like. We both seem to have left out Jordan Richards. I don't know if that's wise or not, because he's one of those guys, they seem to play him no matter what we think.
Yeah. There is that sort of factor, isn't there, Josh, where obviously our stuff is kind of far flung from the way it'll end up, of course, but or likely end up. But there are guys they value either for special teams or locker room / special teams and he might be one of those guys that makes the team for that reason over someone else.
Absolutely. There might be a surprise, like you say, it's far flung, and there might be a surprise coming here. I wonder if it might not be related to Levine. I'm sure you might have something to say about this. Levine, to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, but in 2018, he was like this ace, not a special teams ace. Usually that word goes with special teams, but he was a part of that weak side linebacker platoon, and he was tremendous. And now, I mean, he's a great guy. He's obviously smart, but he's got a little bit of that Weddle thing going on, where I don't know if his body's keeping up with his brain type of thing. Do you think that he could be a potential surprise for not making the roster? And somebody like Nigel Warrior, Geno Stone, or Richards could be instead of him.
I'm just based on the Ravens' track record for guys like Anthony. I don't think so. I think he makes the team. I think he might have inked a deal this offseason as well, maybe another year, which probably isn't prohibitive in terms of keeping him. But he is a good locker room guy, like you mentioned, really, really smart, and he consistently shows up on special teams. That is consistent, and I think that goes a long way with Coach Harbaugh in particular. They like guys like that a lot. So that would surprise me if he gets cut.
And you're right. He did sign a 1-year deal, basically 1.1 million deal. So that's about pretty much answers that, I think.
Yeah, that's not a huge deal, but
It's not a huge deal, but I can't imagine they'd have done that if they felt like what they saw last year prohibited him from being on the team. And they do have these young guys that could step up. And it's a tight cap year. They didn't need to do that unless they wanted to. I
That's
think.
it.
I don't know. Again, this who knows what they're really thinking, but
Have you
I
any
think you're right.
have you any thoughts on Ardarius Washington? And did you have him making the team?
I did. I did. He was the 53rd guy that I put on there. He's this guy I don't know much. I hear all this hype. Everybody's got questions. I'm going to be at the practice on July 31st. Everybody's asking, tell us how he does. Tell us how he does. I'll let you know if I see anything. I don't really know too much about him. So I had him there because when I got to the very bottom, I said this. I know he's got some potential. I've seen his film. I've seen his highlights and everything.
Hmm.
It seems like he's got one of those guys who seems to be one every year in secondary, where he seems like he's all this tremendous upside. Geno Stone was one of those at one point. PFF, of course, famously ranked him super high coming out of the draft, which is worth something with minus a grain of salt or a handful of salt, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think he's one of those guys where he's got that upside. He's got potential. I hope to see something. He might be one of those guys that just pops.
Yeah, he's definitely an IR candidate, I think. But if I look at who it is that would play that single high safety role outside of Deshaun Elliott, so something if something were to happen to Elliott, he's the guy I want coming in and playing that position. I don't see anybody else. Maybe they could move Jimmy back. I don't know. I don't see anybody else that could be as consistent to my mind as Ardarius back there. So that's the main reason I haven't making teams. Like, who else is going to play that safety role if something were to happen to Elliott? And I think there's a space for him as a nickel guy, and also a lot of preseason slash special teams work will play into these kind of periphery guys. These kind of bubble guys like Ardarius. Like, how do they look on teams? He's a hitter. So um, I
And
like
that's
every
why we like him, I think.
yeah, I like everything about his game. He's smaller in stature, and that's certainly a knock or a concern. But
You mentioned who would fill in for Elliott. I think that's the Jordan Richards, the guy we just doesn't seem to excite a lot of conversation, but seems to be in there, and I think he might be presumptively the guy who makes the team over Washington, pending developments in the free season. So even though I put him on the roster, I might have to put Richards if I'm trying to bet safely.
okay,
Right now, I would say it actually is Richards, with Washington having a very good opportunity to take that spot behind Elliott.
okay, yeah, that's fair.
Absolutely. Which brings me to something that worries me a lot. Are you worried, like I am, about this secondary? They're the guys, starters. They're tremendous guys, but there's a lot of money tied up in the secondary, and that's not going to continue, I don't think. So, and I don't remember a time when the Ravens didn't have one cornerback who was sort of a really solid, really high paid veteran that was tremendous, and a guy on a rookie deal that was pretty much just as good. It was, of course, before now, it was Jimmy was the one, and then Marlon was up and coming, and we felt good, but we don't seem to have that now. It's a theme that I keep coming back to on the defense. Is that bothering you at all, or is that just me?
It doesn't bother me that much, and I can't speak to the dollars that I'm not really able to do that in terms of, say, Marcus Peters, bringing him back.
It's a quarter. It's almost a quarter of the cap is in the secondary.
Yeah,
None of those guys are on rookie deals. None of the starters.
right. So we're sure about Marlon going forward. Jimmy could be out the door, retired. I think they're pinning a lot on this Brandon Stevens, Sean Wade picks in terms of the young guys. They could draft next year. I'm not too concerned about that. Like I said, I cannot speak to the dollars and what that would detract from in terms of the rest of the roster. I'm not certain about any of that, but not really. That would be low on my list of concerns, the cornerback room.
I think you have to figure that in the next 2 years, I think Peters has got to be the odd man out. I mean, they could keep him and Marlin. They're not getting rid of Marlin, of course, but it's hard for me to see after some of the guys on offense get on their off their rookie deals. It's hard for me to see them paying for Peters and Marlin. Jimmy's not that expensive, so it seems like somebody's got to step up, or we lose that cornerback, with this position, which is really anchoring the defense. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Yep, yep.
But I'm
A
glad
lot
you're
of it
not
is
worried.
a lot of it is the eyes on Wade and Stevens, and who knows where they go. They could pick up another Marlon Humphrey type uh, in the draft next year. So I think that's low on their list of concerns, other than the dollar, the dollars invested, and I can't really speak to that how they would handle that.
You're right. It is low. I would not have been surprised to see them draft a cornerback in the first round this year. Obviously, it's far from their minds, but I think people would have been surprised. But I was getting ready to say, no, that makes perfect sense. That makes total sense.
Yep.
Because they don't have the young, up and coming young producers at the position. But apparently not. So we will see.